would you structure and what would your business plan be? Well, somebody's done that for us. Her name is Dr. Christine Fuselier. Did I even come close on the name?
Yes.
Close.
Yes. Close.
Say it for me.
Fuselier.
Okay.
That's close.
That was close. The book is called The Business of You. Unlock the door to your destiny. And I called you doctor. You're a PhD.
I have a doctorate in organizational leadership.
Wow, I need you. Can you stick around after the show? We could talk for days. All right, this is an interesting way to look at this. I'm looking at the cover art, and you've got a butterfly, and it's coming out and becoming a butterfly. First of all, what inspired you to write a book called The Business of You?
Well, I was going through a transition in my life. It was, I had experienced a job loss. I had been in the job market for over 27 years. And it was a very traumatic, emotional, a lot of things were going on. So I was working my way through how do I turn that energy into something more positive. So I started to write, and I wrote and wrote and wrote about my experiences, about different things that I...
Did you write when you were depressed?
Yes. I was bad.
You don't want to go back and read that part, probably.
I try not to write about the depression, but I wrote about just things that in my life in general. And as I continued to write, I didn't come up with the title until the end, because it was more like I saw all the things that I kind of took the perspective that I saw the things I had done for businesses. If that meant get up in the morning and go to meetings, do extra readings, extra classes for businesses that I worked for, but would I do that for me? So then The Business of You was born. And it's really a self-leadership, self-accountability book and a self-love book about yourself and how you show up. And I use the analogy of a business because, much like a business, we have to lay our foundation. We have different areas / departments in our lives that we have to develop and do better in. I structured it as a business with all the different departments, and the departments stem from your foundation, which for me was my mind, body, spirit, and soul, and making sure that those are solid. And then how do the other departments branch out, like your partnerships, your personal branding, and things like that?
You know, we all go through life and have our own experiences and our own backgrounds and things that make us what we are. Mm-hmm. And so you've had all of these experiences. You've worked in the corporate world, and you've helped people get their businesses started. So organizing your life, obviously, it sounds like you kind of just came naturally to you when you were thinking about changing things. Most people, when they go through a traumatic change, divorce, the loss of a loved one, loss of a parent, things like that, it does cause you to kind of reassess, doesn't it?
Yes, you take a step back, and that reinvention of yourself, which is why the butterflies were so important to have, because it's an evolution of you. And you go through it. The thing I try to caution people is, yes, go through the process, because it's a process, everything is, but don't get stuck in the process. Transfer that energy into something more positive so you can come out of the process a better person, or a new, improved you, if you will.
Obviously, you're a person of faith, and that plays a big part in, as we said, all the things you've been through as well.
Yes, I do believe strongly in the faith and pulling my energy from where my strength comes from. I'm a Christian, and I believe that God has put us here on this earth for a particular purpose. I believe He expects extraordinary things out of us. And it's a life that we've been gifted, and why not do the things that He has placed us here to do? And unfortunately, too many people leave this world without knowing what that is. And my hope for this book is that it's something that people can tap into and say, what does God want from me? Why am I here? And then they use some of the tools and techniques that I have in here to kind of figure that out.
So since the beginning of time, humans have wondered, why am I here? And it's all in this little book. Wow, this is revolutionary stuff. Let's break it down here. I'm going to start near the beginning. And like you said, you broke it down into things that a business would do. And the very first thing I see is positive press. Well, as a member of the press or the media, how do you get positive press in your life?
Yes, so positive press is quite the opposite of negative press. It's that press that you sometimes have to create for yourself. So we know negative press is going to come whether we want it to or not. Sometimes things just happen and you get this negative information about you or things that you're doing. But when you create that positive press, you're telling your story in a way that helps to tap into your stronger being, that makes you understand that, yeah, some things have happened to me. Yes, I've gone through some things, but that's okay because they make me better. As you stated earlier, everything we go through molds us into the people we are. So with our positive press, we put out the positive stories about our lives. We share the positive things, not to be confused with being arrogant or braggadocious, but to tell your story in a way that you're proud about and not be ashamed of it.
Yeah.
Often in this culture,
blow your own horn, baby.
Yeah, don't be afraid to do it.
Yeah, and especially nowadays with social media, when people can go negative on you and you won't even know it, and everybody else in the world does.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of skimming here. Positive psychology.
Yes.
And looks like each chapter starts with a nice quote, too. Happiness is an attitude. We either make ourselves miserable or happy and strong. The amount of work is the same. You know, this does go back to that. It takes just as much energy to complain, and actually sometimes it takes more.
Yes.
As Mom used to say, use more muscles to frown than to smile.
Yes. And often when something negative happens to us, we want to spread that around and say, you know, this is what happened to me and this is how my life was, versus when something positive happens, people tend to kind of put that in the back of their minds. So that positive psychology is helping you to have that healthy mental state, which translates into a healthy positive behavior. So you want to make sure that when that negative trigger comes on, you're able to switch it. So that's what positive psychology is all about, really thinking about what's in our minds, affirming the positive things versus, oh, well, you know, I didn't grow up in the best neighborhood. We didn't have the best things in life, so my life is going to turn out like, you know, maybe my parents or my friends because we were in a situation. And positive psychology is the way you flip that trigger.
Wow, okay, I gotta find where my trigger is and flip it. You know, you get to be a certain age and then you kind of look back at your life. And we were talking about, I grew up in a lower blue-collar neighborhood. I mean, we had just barely enough to get by. Everybody in the neighborhood was the same way. I didn't realize that people had nicer clothes and nicer things till I got to high school. Like, oh, wow, y'all look great. You know, but by that point, you know, you kind of adjusted and accepted. I think maybe kids today might have a little tougher time because of social media and the fact that you can see what everybody else has. And, you know, I was kind of isolated in my little neighborhood. I grew up with the same kids all my life, rode the bus with them, went to school with them, and they were in the same social strata that I was in, so it seemed perfectly normal. I just assumed everybody lived in a 2-bedroom house. I didn't know these had mansions.
You had a house?
Well, you know, see? That's what I'm talking about. Right. Yeah. All right, well, this is obviously some great stuff. We're talking to Dr. Christine Fuselier, and she has a book called The Business of You. She's approaching some of the problems of life from a very practical yet spiritual look. I'm going to skip right ahead to the next chapter. It's called The Puzzle. What's the puzzle about?
So the puzzle,
pretty much my life is a puzzle. This is going to be a long chapter, Donna.
The puzzle is probably one of my favorite chapters because I take the analogy of a puzzle. So when you have a puzzle and you're trying to put it together, every piece has a place for you to get the big picture. So sometimes in a puzzle, there's a piece that if you have a piece, sometimes you try to force it in because you're like, this is the way it should go, and I know it should fit here. And when you try to force that piece in that area, then it can get damaged. And sometimes in our lives, we try to force things in our lives. We try to force people or situations in our lives that don't fit. and it causes some damage. It causes some issues. So I always say, like, if you look at a puzzle on the box, it always has, this is what this should look like. Think about your brand and what you want your life to look like. That's the entire puzzle in its entirety. So then if there's a piece that doesn't fit, then you have to sometimes move the pieces around, and sometimes you take a step back and say, oh, this makes perfect sense. Now let me put this piece here, and then it fits, and then you add each piece, so it's one perfect puzzle.
Wow. So that's what's wrong with me. I'm really bad with puzzles. That made all the sense in the world. Very good. Oh, a quote from somebody I've actually met, India Arie. I met her backstage at a concert, and what a sweetheart she was. Can I read her quote?
Yes.
Is that okay? You never know where life is going to take you, and you can't change where you've been, but today you have the opportunity to choose.
Yes, love her. I love that quote. And this chapter's choice, choose, chosen. Everything is about choices. Sometimes we think that we're put in circumstances, and in some cases, some people are. But for the most part, we choose. We choose sometimes the people we interact with. We choose the jobs we're going to take, the jobs we're going to stay in. We choose the relationships we're going to stay in. We choose a lot of the things in our lives.
Choose negative attitude.
Yes, we choose.
You have to choose that.
Yes.
And sometimes not choosing is choosing.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. So you do have to take ownership for the choices that you make. I tell my girls all the time, life is about choices. And you wake up every morning and you can choose what type of day you're going to have based on what type of attitude you choose to have.
When you go out and you speak to people, do people respond with their own stories? Or what's the most interesting thing that somebody's told you when you were actually out in public talking about the book?
Well, a lot of people are a little resistant to when I talk about the mind department and the different mindsets that we have and how we grow up, and you have this mindset that you've only known all your life. That mindset, there's two types, your growth and your fixed mindset. And when I talk about having a fixed mindset, this is how my life is because I have this situation, I'm in this environment, and I can't be successful because of that. And I talk about how you shift that mindset. A lot of people are resistant because they're like, I'm 44 years old, I'm 50 years old, I'm 40. There's no way I can change my mindset. It is what it is. But I challenge you can. You can. It's again about choices, and you can choose to change your mindset.
I bet women are better than men. And I say that because you see women who, for whatever reason, their husband passed away or something like that. They had been married since they were 17, 18 years old. Mm-hmm. That's the only life they knew.
Yeah.
And they turn it back around, and they become happy people, after the grieving process is done. And you would think, well, you lived a life for 30 years or whatever, and that was your life.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden it's not anymore, and you've got a new life.
It's changed. And my mom is one of the bigger examples I've seen of that. She was married to my dad for 45 years. And they got a divorce, and she was in a certain lifestyle for that long period of time. There was abuse, there was mistreatment, there was a lot of things going on that we grew up and saw. And then at 45, she decided she had enough.
45 years.
45 years, right? Because she was 60. I want to say 60 when she decided her first apartment. She was 60 by herself.
Wow.
It was amazing.
And it had to be inspirational for you to see that.
I was like, wow. And she was so excited to have her own space and her first time on a plane and just going out. We're from Chicago, just going out of Chicago. And to see that, I was so inspired because it's never too late. You can always shift, and you can always make a better life for yourself. She's healthier. She's not on a lot of medication. She enjoys life. She's like, she was swimming for the first time. I was like, wow, it's never too late.
Never too late. The book is called The Business of You, and it's a practical approach to the problems we all face. And Dr. Christine Fuselier is our guest. How can people find the book? If you're going to be out signing books, do you have a website, things like that we can get in touch with you?
Yes, the book is available on Amazon.com. And for our book signings, they will be on my website, which is www.pecink.com. And you can click on the Business of You link to find out where our next book signing will be.
How long have you been in Richmond?
Almost 2 years in August. So
we're glad to have you, and obviously a big addition to our little town. Thank you for coming in today.
thank you so much for having me.
It's called The Business of You, and it's the focus of our talk this morning on Focus Richmond.
You've been listening to Focus Richmond, a public service presentation of Summit Media Richmond. To comment on our program or to contact us about having your civic, nonprofit, or charitable organization on the air, please contact us at Focus Richmond at EZ1009.